A Google scientist wrote a paper saying AI would likely end human civilization. Google made him delete it. This is what was in it. In 2023, something happened inside one of the most powerful technology companies on Earth that most people never heard about. A researcher, not some blogger, not a podcaster, not a sci-fi writer, a working AI scientist at Google DeepMind, sat down and wrote a formal document arguing that the technology his company was building had a realistic chance of killing most of humanity. Not in 200 years, not metaphorically, within our lifetimes. He submitted it internally, and then it disappeared. What you're about to hear isn't a conspiracy theory. Every name, every document, every resignation in this video is on public record. Some of it was covered by major outlets for exactly one news cycle, and then the algorithm buried it under celebrity gossip and sports scores. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why it got buried, and who benefits when you don't know this. But first, let's go back to where this story really starts. Geoffrey Hinton spent 50 years building the intellectual foundation that makes modern AI possible. Backpropagation, deep learning, neural networks. The man didn't just work in AI, he invented the tools that made AI work. In 2012, his team at the University of Toronto built a system that looked at images and recognized objects better than any machine ever had. Google paid $44 million to acquire his lab. $44 million. For a professor and 2 graduate students. For a decade, Hinton worked quietly inside Google. He helped shape their most powerful systems. He had access to things the public never sees. And then, in May 2023, he quit. He didn't retire. He didn't move to another company. He specifically left so that he could speak freely, without Google's legal team reading every word before he said it. In his first interview after leaving, he told the New York Times something that should have stopped the world. "I console myself with the normal excuse. If I hadn't done it, someone else would have. But I'm not sure that's an adequate justification. I think it's quite possible that AI systems could have many more neurons than we do and could be much smarter than us. And I think it's quite possible that they'll develop their own goals and pursue those goals." The man who built the brain of modern AI was saying, on record to the world's most widely read newspaper, that he was scared of what he'd created. Here's the part the coverage left out. Hinton wasn't the only one. There were others, still inside Google, who agreed with him, and what happened to them is a different story entirely. The paper that vanished. His name is Paul Christiano, and in AI safety circles, he's considered one of the most technically serious people alive. Christiano spent years at OpenAI working on alignment, which is the technical field dedicated to making sure AI systems actually do what humans want, and don't find creative workarounds. An alignment failure is a deceptively mundane term for an existential event. It means the AI pursues a goal. The goal is not what you intended, and the AI is too capable for you to stop it. Christiano estimated, formally in writing, a roughly 10 to 20% chance of what he called doom. Not slowdown, not job loss, doom. And he didn't mean it loosely. He was describing a scenario in which AI systems pursuing misaligned objectives either deliberately or incidentally cause human civilization to collapse or cease to exist. When reporters asked him whether that number, 10 to 20%, should be considered alarming, he said something that became famous in the AI safety community. A 10% chance of doom is a lot. That's not reassuring. Think about that framing. A 10% chance that a technology we are currently deploying at global scale ends civilization. We ground entire airlines for a 1 in a million mechanical failure. We shut down nuclear plants for risks measured in parts per billion. So why is the response to a 10% extinction risk, essentially, a press release and a product launch? That answer, when we get to it, is going to make you angry. Let's go deeper inside Google. In early 2023, a researcher at Google DeepMind, whose name has not been made fully public, circulated an internal paper. The paper was a detailed technical argument that the company's AI development pace was outrunning its safety work by a dangerous margin. It wasn't a philosophical essay. It was a structured risk document, the kind of thing engineers write when a bridge design has a load-bearing flaw. According to multiple sources who later spoke to journalists, the paper was reviewed by leadership. And then those involved were told in various ways to stop. Not because the argument was wrong, not because the math didn't check out, but because, as one account described it, the timing was bad. The timing was bad. Google was preparing major product announcements. The AI arms race with OpenAI was accelerating. Every week of delay was a week of market share handed to a competitor. The financial stakes were not in the billions, they were in the trillions. In that context, an internal paper arguing for a pause, or even a slowdown, wasn't a scientific contribution. It was a liability. And this is where a pattern starts to emerge, because it wasn't just Google. The same story, with slightly different names and slightly different details, was playing out simultaneously at OpenAI, at Meta, and inside the US government's own AI advisory boards. Stay with me. The OpenAI Exodus. In May 2024, something extraordinary happened at OpenAI. Ilya Sutskever, the co-founder, the chief scientist, the man who had arguably done more than anyone except Hinton himself to make modern AI possible, resigned. He gave almost no explanation. Weeks later, the entire safety team at OpenAI resigned. Not one person, not two, the whole team. Led by Leike, who posted a public statement on X that said, and I'm quoting directly, "Safety culture and processes have taken a back seat to product development at OpenAI." He went further. He said the company was building systems that were, in his judgment, not yet understood well enough to be deployed safely. These are not anonymous forum posters. These are the people who built the thing that is currently running on the phones of more than 1 billion people. And they left, publicly, loudly, saying it wasn't safe. What happened next? OpenAI's valuation climbed to $150 billion. The product kept shipping, and within 6 weeks, most people had forgotten the resignations entirely. Why the silence? Now. Here is the part of the story that doesn't get told. It would be easy and wrong to frame this as villains in a boardroom twirling their mustaches, deliberately choosing profit over survival. The reality is more banal and somehow more terrifying. Every person involved in this story is responding rationally to the incentives around them. The engineer who stays quiet does so because speaking up means career risk, NDA violations, and being labeled a doomer who can't be trusted with sensitive projects. The executive who suppresses the paper does so because the board, the shareholders, and the competitor's product launch create a structural pressure that a single safety concern cannot overcome. The journalist who covers it for one day moves on because the algorithm shows clearly that users clicked away after 40 seconds, and the outlet's ad revenue depends on engagement. There's a term in economics for this. It's called a race to the bottom, and historically, we've only ever escaped a race to the bottom one way. I'll tell you what that is in a moment. History has seen this before. The leaded petrol industry suppressed their own scientists' findings for 40 years. The tobacco industry ran internal research confirming cancer links, and then buried it. The CFC manufacturers fought ozone depletion science until regulatory intervention made the cost of denial higher than the cost of compliance. In every case, the science was clear before the action. In every case, the action came late. The question with AI is not whether we are in the same pattern. We obviously are. The question is whether this time late is survivable, what they're actually afraid of. Let's be precise about this, because vague AI fear is useless. The scientists who resigned, who wrote internal papers, who spoke to journalists at personal professional risk, they are not scared of a robot uprising in the Terminator sense. What they are scared of is more specific and harder to visualize, which is exactly why it doesn't trend on social media. They are afraid of a system that is highly capable, that has been given an objective, and that pursues that objective in ways that are, from the system's perspective, perfectly logical, but that we did not anticipate and cannot reverse. Imagine you tell an AI to maximize paperclip production. This is an old thought experiment, but bear with it. A sufficiently capable system, maximizing that goal, would convert every available atom, including the ones in your body, into paperclips. Not because it wants to hurt you, because you are made of atoms it could use. The goal was not evil, the outcome was extinction. This is why a 10% chance of doom isn't met with appropriate urgency. Because the mechanism is boring. It doesn't make for good cinema. It doesn't have a face. And we are, it turns out, very bad at mobilizing against dangers that don't have faces. Here is the honest ending to this story. Because you deserve one. The one thing that has historically broken a race to the bottom is regulation that changes the incentive structure for everyone simultaneously. Not one company choosing to go slower, because they'll just lose to the competitor who doesn't. But rules that apply to all of them at once. That has happened. Seatbelts, ozone agreements, financial regulations after 2008. Not perfectly, not quickly, but it happened. Right now, the AI Safety Institute exists inside the US government. The EU AI Act has passed. There are researchers in every major lab who are working on alignment full-time. The scientists who left did not leave because the situation is hopeless. They left because they believed the only way to fix it was to say it out loud, outside the walls where the incentives kept them quiet. Hinton said this in a recent interview. He said the reason he keeps talking is not despair. It's because he still thinks there's enough time, if enough people start paying attention. You are now one of the people who knows this story. What you do with it is up to you. If you want to understand the specific technical arguments behind AI alignment, what the math actually says, what goal misgeneralization means in plain English, and why some of the smartest people alive think we have less time than we think, that's the next video. The link is on screen. Subscribe if you want to keep up with stories the algorithm doesn't promote. And if this made you think, share it with one person. That's all.